At my sister's graduation party, my mother-in-law stood up from her chair, tapped her wine glass with a butter knife, and announced to 47 people that the house my husband and I had been paying the mortgage on for 3 years now belonged to my brother-in-law. I was 7 months pregnant. I had written the check for the down payment myself. And my husband sat next to me, smiling at his plate, like she had just said something perfectly reasonable. That moment is where this story ends. But I want to tell you where it started, because none of what I did afterward makes sense without the beginning. And the beginning, honestly, was so slow and so ordinary that I almost didn't notice it was happening to me. Before I do, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching this right now? What city are you in? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And knowing you're out there, actually listening, means more to me than I know how to say out loud. Go ahead and type it. I'll be here. My name is Cassidy. I'm 32 years old, and I live outside of Columbus, Ohio. I'm a registered nurse, which means I spend a lot of my working hours taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. And I say that not as a complaint, but as context, because I think it explains something about why it took me as long as it did to understand what was happening in my own home. I met my husband Nathan when I was 25. He was warm and funny and completely devoted, and I fell for him without any reservations whatsoever, which I now recognize was the first warning sign, because I am not by nature a person without reservations. I am cautious. I double-check. I read the fine print, but I did not read the fine print on Nathan's family, and that turned out to be an expensive oversight in ways I am still calculating. His mother, Paulette, was a woman who could make generosity feel like a debt. She cooked big Sunday dinners and told you how long they took. She drove an hour to pick you up from the airport and mentioned it for 3 weeks afterward. She smiled constantly, especially when she was making a decision that was going to affect your life without consulting you. I noticed these things. I filed them away. I kept showing up to Sunday dinner. His younger brother, Donovan, was 26 when Nathan and I got married and had never in his adult life held a job for more than 8 months. He was not malicious exactly, just profoundly comfortable with being supported. By his mother, by his friends, and, once I entered the picture, increasingly by us. Nathan's father, Ray, had passed away 4 years before I met Nathan. What he left behind was a modest life insurance policy, and a family that had learned to function with Paulette as the unchallenged center of every decision, every resource, every conversation. I understood, intellectually, that this was grief and structure, and just the way they'd always done things. I tried to honor that. What I did not fully understand was that I was being folded into that structure as a resource, not as a person. We got married in the fall of my 27th year, small ceremony, just family and close friends, at a venue outside the city. I paid for most of it, because Nathan's savings were thin and I had spent years building mine. And I told myself that was okay, that we were building a life together, and who starts a marriage keeping score. I believed that, genuinely, for longer than I should have. The first year the asks were small. Could we spot Donovan $400 until he got his next check? Could we help Paulette with her heating bill because it was a cold winter? Could we cover Nathan's cousin's car insurance for 2 months because she was going through something? Yes. Sure, of course. We were doing fine. I was pulling in around $78,000 a year, working long shifts, and picking up overtime when I could. And Nathan was making about $52,000 in an operations role at a logistics company. And between us we were managing. But managing has a ceiling, and I didn't fully see the ceiling until we started talking about buying a house. I was the one who pulled our financials. I was the one who sat down with a spreadsheet on a Tuesday night after a 12-hour shift, and realized that over the previous 2 years, we had transferred, in one form or another, just under $19,000 to members of Nathan's family. That number hit me somewhere in my sternum. I sat with it for a long time before I brought it up with Nathan, and when I did, very carefully, very gently, he looked genuinely surprised. He said he hadn't realized it added up that way. I believed him. He is not a calculating man. He is just a man who was raised to say yes to his mother, and never developed the reflex to count the cost of it. We bought the house anyway. I put in $47,000 from my own savings, money I had been setting aside since I started nursing. Nathan contributed $11,000. The house was in a suburb about 20 minutes from the hospital where I worked. 3 bedrooms, good bones, a yard big enough to actually use. I closed on it on a Thursday morning and cried in the parking lot of the title company, for reasons I couldn't fully articulate, except that I recognized the feeling from somewhere. I had done what I promised myself I would do. I had made something that was mine. That feeling lasted approximately 6 weeks. Paulette had opinions about the house. She had opinions about the curtains and the paint colors, and the fact that we'd chosen a neighborhood that was 40 minutes from hers. She mentioned, more than once, that there was a perfectly good spare bedroom going unused. She mentioned that Donovan was having trouble with his roommates. I heard all of this and I said nothing, because I was working 4 days a week, managing a pregnancy I had just discovered, and trying to keep my household running without losing my mind. Nathan, to his credit, told his mother that we needed time to get settled. That bought us approximately 2 months before Paulette started coming by unannounced on her way to and from places she may or may not have actually been going. I want to be clear about something. I liked Paulette, in certain lights. She had a lot of energy and a lot of love for her sons, and some part of me genuinely wished for a long time that some of that would eventually find its way to me. It didn't. I was useful in her world, but I was not beloved. There's a difference, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. My own family is small and spread out. My mom is in Arizona. My dad remarried and lives in Oregon, and I have one younger sister, Bethany, who had graduated from Ohio State that spring with a degree in environmental science, and whom I adored in a complete and uncomplicated way that felt, in contrast to everything else in my life at that time, almost startlingly simple. Bethany's graduation party was Paulette's idea. She offered to host it at her house, said it would be her gift, said she'd handle everything, and my mother flew in from Scottsdale, and my dad and his wife drove down from Cleveland, and we had 40-something people in Paulette's backyard on a Saturday afternoon in May, with a catered spread, and a cooler full of drinks and string lights that honestly looked beautiful. Bethany was glowing. I was 7 months pregnant and my feet hurt, but I was happy, or I was trying to be happy, which is sometimes close enough. I was standing near the dessert table when Paulette tapped her wine glass. I want you to understand the room. 47 people. My parents, both of them, in the same place for the first time in 11 years. My sister in her dress. Nathan's extended family. Neighbors. My own co-workers I had invited because I was proud of Bethany. A room full of witnesses. Paulette smiled the way she always smiled, wide and confident, and completely unbothered, and she said that she had a very special announcement to share, and that she hoped everyone would join her in celebrating not just Bethany's achievement, but also a wonderful new chapter for their family. She looked at Donovan. She looked at Nathan. She said that after much thought and prayer, she had decided that the house, and here she paused just long enough for me to understand that she was about to say something that would change things. The house at 4814 Carver Mill Road, which Nathan and Cassidy had purchased last year, was being transferred into Donovan's name as a gift, to give him the foundation he needed to start fresh. The room made a sound. Not a loud one. The sound a room makes when enough people register, at the same moment, that something is very wrong. I felt Nathan's hand find my arm. I don't know if he was steadying me or steadying himself. I looked at Paulette. She was still smiling. I want to stop here for a second and tell you something about what shock feels like, because I was a nurse. I had sat with people in crisis, and I thought I understood shock. I did not. Shock, when it is yours, is not dramatic. It is very quiet. It is the sensation of understanding what you just heard, and being completely unable to connect it to reality. I stood there in Paulette's backyard next to a table of petit fours and lemon bars, 7 months pregnant, and I understood with total clarity that what had just been said was impossible. The house was in my name. My name. It was my down payment, my savings, my credit score that had qualified us for the rate. There was no world in which Paulette could unilaterally transfer it. And then I understood something else. She didn't know that. She had either not checked or not cared, and she had made this announcement assuming that Nathan would handle it, which meant she assumed Nathan would agree, which meant she had spoken to Nathan about this before. Tonight. And Nathan had not told me. I looked at my husband. He was looking at the grass. There is a specific kind of pain that has nothing to do with the person who wronged you, and everything to do with the person who watched it happen. That pain is its own category. It doesn't burn. It just opens up, very slowly, like a door you didn't know was there. Bethany was at my elbow in seconds. She didn't say anything. She just stood next to me with her shoulder pressed against mine, and I was so grateful for that I almost came apart right there. My mother crossed the backyard in about 6 steps. She's a small woman, my mother, originally from Lexington, Kentucky, with a voice that is usually very soft. She looked at Paulette and said, quietly and very clearly, "I'm sorry. Did you just say you're giving away my daughter's house?" Paulette said, "It's a family matter, and I'd appreciate it if..." My mother said, "I am her family." I said, "We need to go inside." I pulled Nathan by the arm into the kitchen, and I closed the door, and I looked at him and I asked him. I remember keeping my voice very level, which is something I had learned from working nights in a hospital, the ability to be completely calm while something catastrophic was happening. I asked him if he had known about this. He said yes. He said his mom had brought it up 3 weeks ago, and he didn't think she'd actually do it, and he was going to tell me, and then he didn't know how. I want to tell you that I screamed at him. I want to tell you it was loud and satisfying and cinematic. It wasn't. I sat down on a kitchen chair and I said very quietly, "Nathan, my name is on that deed, only my name. Did she know that?" He looked at me for a long moment and said, "I don't think so." I said, "Did you tell her?" He said, I didn't think she'd actually do it. I said, I need you to go back out there and tell everyone the party is wonderful and you'll circle back. And I need you to give me 20 minutes. He went, and I sat at Paulette's kitchen table, and I called Bethany, who came inside immediately. I called my mother, who was already at the back door, and then I made one more call, to a woman named April, who is a real estate attorney, and my best friend from nursing school, and I caught her on a Saturday in May while she was at her own kid's soccer game. And I explained, in 90 seconds, what had just happened. April said, Is the property in your name only? I said yes, she said, then she can't do a thing. Not without your signature and a notarized deed transfer. She has no legal claim. That announcement was a fantasy. I said, Can you send me something in writing I can show my husband tonight? She said, I'll email you right now. I went back outside. The party had the strained, slightly too loud quality of people pretending everything was fine. Paulette was talking to a group near the string lights. Donovan was at the drinks cooler looking vaguely uncomfortable, which was at least a human response. My father had found a lawn chair and was watching the whole scene the way he watches football. Like he was waiting for something to happen. I walked to the center of the backyard. I did not tap a glass. I just said clearly enough for the people nearby to hear, I want to respond to what was announced earlier, so there's no confusion. The conversations around me went quiet. The house at 4814 Carver Mill Road is in my name alone. I hold the deed. There is no transfer occurring, now or in the future, without my written consent. I want everyone here, especially Donovan, to be clear on that. Donovan stared at me. Paulette's smile went somewhere. I looked at my mother-in-law and I said, I know you love your sons. I have never doubted that. But you do not get to give away something that is not yours. Then I hugged my sister, said happy graduation, and Nathan drove me home. In the car, neither of us said anything for the first 11 minutes. I counted. I was a person who counted things. Then Nathan said, I should have told you. I said, yes, he said. I didn't know she would do it in front of everyone. I said, Nathan, she did it in front of everyone including my parents because she assumed no one would make a scene. She assumed I would be too polite and too pregnant and too grateful for the party to push back. She was using your brother's situation to take something from me, and she assumed you would let her. He didn't answer that, which was its own kind of answer. I spent the next 3 weeks doing something I should have done when Nathan and I first got serious. I went through everything, bank accounts, shared and separate. Automatic transfers I hadn't fully scrutinized. A joint credit card that had, over the previous 2 years, accumulated $6,400 in charges I recognized as Paulette's grocery runs, Donovan's auto repair, a weekend trip to Gatlinburg that we had not gone on. I made a spreadsheet. I made it very thorough. When I was done, the number across the board, including the original $19,000 I'd found before we bought the house, came to a little over $31,000. I did not show Nathan the spreadsheet right away. I showed it to April first, and to a financial planner I had been meaning to call for 2 years, and finally called on a Wednesday during my lunch break. We talked for an hour. I want to tell you that conversation was one of the most useful things I have ever done for myself. The financial planner's name was Christopher. He was the kind of person who asked very precise questions and didn't fill the silence when you needed to think. He helped me understand what I had. The house, my retirement accounts, the savings I'd kept separate, my own earning capacity, and what I was at risk of losing if I did not make some changes. Not because Nathan was a bad man, but because I had built a life with someone who had never been taught to protect it. I went home and I showed Nathan the spreadsheet. The look on his face when he saw the total was the same look he'd had in that kitchen. This particular expression of a man who knew something was wrong and had chosen, over and over, not to count it. Not out of cruelty. Out of something worse, actually, the comfortable assumption that I would handle it. I said, I need you to understand that I love you. And I need you to understand that I cannot keep building something while part of it is being handed out the back door. I need things to change. And I need them to change now. Or I do not know what our future looks like. I mean that. I am not threatening you. I am telling you the truth. He was quiet for a long time. And then he said, What do you need me to do? That was the moment I decided to stay. We closed the joint credit card. We opened a new one with a limit I controlled. We had a conversation. A very direct, very uncomfortable one. With Nathan's mother. In which Nathan did the talking while I sat beside him. And in which he told her that any financial support going forward would be discussed with him and his wife first. That unannounced visits were not going to work for our family, and that the announcement she had made at the graduation party was not acceptable and would not happen again. Paulette cried. Donovan left the room. Nathan held the line. I want to be honest. It was not perfect. Nathan flinched more than once, but he held it. Paulette did not speak to me for 6 weeks. I used that time to finish setting up the nursery, negotiate a pay raise that brought my hourly up by $4, and transfer the house into a trust in both our names, with a provision that required both signatures for any sale or transfer. April handled it at a reduced rate because she said she owed me one from a bad semester junior year, and I told her we were absolutely even now. Our daughter was born in August. Healthy, loud, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with her father's ears and what I already recognized as my absolute refusal to be ignored. The labor was 31 hours and I will not pretend that was fun. Nathan did not leave the room once. He held my hand through all of it, and when she finally arrived, he put his forehead against mine and said, "You are the most capable person I have ever met in my life." And I believed him, which is the thing about Nathan. Even after everything, I believed him. Paulette sent flowers, daisies, which are my least favorite, but she sent them. Donovan got a job. A real one, in warehouse logistics, which Nathan helped him find and which, notably, did not involve our bank account. He's been there 8 months now. I don't know if it'll stick, but I choose to believe it might. 6 months after our daughter was born, Bethany came to visit. She stayed for a long weekend, and we sat on the back porch after the baby was asleep and she said, "I've been thinking about your graduation party a lot lately," I said. "Bethany, it was also your graduation party." She laughed, that specific laugh she has had since she was 12, and said, "Yeah, but honestly, it was your moment." She wasn't entirely wrong. "I want to ask you something before you go, and I want you to think about it genuinely. How much of what you've built are you quietly letting other people draft off of? Not because they're evil, not because they meant to, but because you were capable, and you were present, and it was easier for everyone if you just handled it. And at some point, just handling it became the whole architecture of their comfort. I am not saying cut everyone off. I am not saying become a person who keeps score on a spreadsheet for the rest of your life. I'm saying, know what you have, know what it cost you, and know that the people who love you, the ones who actually deserve the word, will not ask you to give it away. The house is still ours. The trust documents are in the filing cabinet next to the baby's birth certificate. My daughter is asleep in the room that I painted the color I wanted, on a street I chose, in a life that I built, and no one is getting any of it without my signature. If any part of this story found you somewhere you recognize, please subscribe. I put up new stories every week, and if you've ever been the capable one, the one who handles it, the one everyone quietly depends on, I see you. I really do. You are not alone in this.